Non-binary daughter demanded I raise her unborn child as my own, blaming me for her pregnancy, and now she's stormed out. My daughter came to me when she was 16 and told me she was non-binary, but only sometimes. Some days she would feel more male than female, and other days she felt like neither. What she wanted was for me to ask her each and every day what day it was, and then refer to her by the pronoun that matched her identity of the day. I looked at her and told her that just wasn't going to happen. Having grown up spending way too much time on LiveJournal during the days of bun self, zen self, zir self pronouns, I knew this wasn't anything new. People may think this is some recent generational trend, but they're fooling themselves. I explained to her that I would use whatever pronoun she wanted and would do my best to keep up, but the responsibility was hers to tell me every day. I was not going to play a guessing game. This back and forth went on for a week, maybe two, before she seemed to get tired or maybe bored by the process. Eventually, she just told me to call her again. She still identifies as non-binary, which is fine by me. To be honest, when all this was going on and she asked for she, he, or they, it was manageable. If she had come to me with a request for fox self or fox them, I don't think I could have said those words with a straight face. Anyway, that was the pronoun situation, and, looking in the rear view, it felt like the start of things going off the rails. Here is where my real concern starts. My daughter is now 18, pregnant, and I can't tell if she's lost her mind. Or if I'm the asshole. You be the judge. This year has been a constant struggle. She wanted to take a gap year before starting at community college, but absolutely cannot keep a job. According to her, every retail environment is too phobic about her non-binary state. For context, my child looks, dresses, and acts exactly like any other young adult woman. When I try to get details about this supposed discrimination, she just shuts me down and gets prickly, so I truly have no idea what's gone on at these jobs. She's churned through 4 or 5 jobs this year alone, quitting each one. She flat out refuses to consider call center work because she doesn't like talking on the phone, and now is holding out hope for some magical remote position she can't seem to find. She's been unemployed since Thanksgiving. She actually quit her last job on Black Friday. I was on the brink of giving her an ultimatum: either enroll in school for the next semester or land a full-time job, or move out and live with friends. But then she hit me with the bombshell: she's 5 months pregnant. And now, she's glaring at me with accusation and saying this is all my fault. This is the part where I might actually be the asshole. In that moment, I called her a little idiot. I never call my child names, never. But I saw red and the words escaped before I could stop them. She blamed me, saying it's my fault because of, get this, a hormone thing, something I'm hearing for the first time, as well as birth control, which, again, she never once mentioned wanting. Did she expect me to travel back in time to fix this? If she didn't want estrogen birth control, there are non-pill options, and all she had to do was ask. I would have driven her to the doctor, or she could have taken her own car, she has one, and gotten it herself. She has her own medical card, though admittedly, the copay could have been an issue if she had no job. But I know for a fact her high school handed out free condoms like Halloween candy. Her friends used to giggle over the flavored ones, and there were times I'd find condom balloons scattered around the house. There has never been a shortage of birth control. But she used none of it. Now we're well past the date where abortion is a legal option, even though I would have taken her, if that's what she'd wanted. We live in an abortion-protected state, and as a family, we could afford it. She's known since about 2 months in that she was pregnant, and now she's come to think of her baby as a sibling. Here's the kicker: she expects me to raise this child as my own. She tells me outright that it is my duty to take responsibility, because according to her, my failure to accept her non-binary identity is the reason she got pregnant. She wants this child to be like her brother or sister, and I'm expected to have, at 40-something, another baby. You can bet my language got a lot more direct. Get your head out of your ass, and, congratulations, mommy, you have some big decisions to make. I made it perfectly clear, not up for debate, I will not raise this baby for her. She outright refused to tell me who the father is. By now that my head isn't about to pop off, I find myself hoping she has a secret boyfriend. She does have a few friends who were born male but don't identify that way now. But we didn't even get to the discussion. I completely lost it when she said she thinks of her own baby as a sibling and wants me to raise it like my own child. At this moment, she's locked herself in her room, loudly wailing. I don't feel proud of myself, I just feel terrible. She's been in there for 12 hours straight. She has an attached bathroom, so I'm guessing she won't emerge until hunger wins. To be honest, knowing her, she might have snacks stashed in there. Now, I'm at a complete loss. Part of me wants to blame the pregnancy and the hormones and the fear, because being pregnant is awful and messes with your mind. But I can't escape the nagging suspicion that I either raised a spoiled brat or someone with something darker emerging, maybe a personality disorder. All I want to know is, what do I do to help my daughter, while also holding her accountable for the child she's bringing into the world? How can I help her come to terms with the most feminine thing she'll ever do, giving birth and possibly breastfeeding, while honoring her non-binary identity? Am I just a massive asshole? Right now, my house feels like it's been dropped in the middle of crazy town, and I swear I'm not raising her baby. But I keep thinking, at what point do you drag a legal adult to the hospital to get help? It's the middle of the night, and she decided to pack some things and leave to stay with a friend, one who I have a strong suspicion is the baby's father. Before she left, she made a point of telling me that she'd already called the police to tell them she was leaving of her own free will and was not in danger. Like I was going to report my own 18-year-old daughter as a runaway or something? The whole suggestion felt so insulting. I told her clearly, if she wants to pursue adoption, she needs to figure out the details with the father, and she's welcome back home when she has a real plan in place. I kept it short because I could hear her on her way out. I think she intended to just disappear without a word. This whole situation is overwhelming, and honestly, I hate to say it, but I sincerely hope she chooses to give the baby up for adoption. She's a confused, hot mess right now. I can't blame myself for not wanting to get on this crazy roller coaster and raise her baby. Let's be brutally honest, if I agreed to raise this child as my own, this likely wouldn't be the last time. She doesn't want to use birth control, so what's stopping her from repeating this pattern? She decided a couple of years ago that she's non-binary, and expected me to instantly understand everything about it. Now, she's rewriting history to blame me for her pregnancy. My head is spinning, and I'm not even the one living in her shoes. There will be more babies if nothing changes, I can see it coming. I feel sympathy for her, honestly, because she seems so lost. Maybe she's struggling with body dysphoria, caught in a life-changing situation she can't escape. She must feel so trapped, and I know that's why she's lashing out at me, blaming me instead of taking responsibility for her own choices. She's desperately searching for an escape hatch. She is still so young, she hardly knows who she is yet, let alone how she'll take care of a baby when deep down, she knows she can barely take care of herself. But what really blew my mind was when she threw away her birth control, saying it was a form of feminization. That's actually wild to me. She needs to learn there's a difference between gender-enforced stereotypes and actual biology. Biology doesn't care what gender you are, it works the same way. Her behavior has become a nightmare, and it hurts to admit that. Birth control isn't some form of forced femininity, it's just responsibility when you're having sex that can get you pregnant. I wish I'd had the right words when she said that to me, I sort of just sputtered and could barely respond. This is such a can of worms. The only thing I can think of is trying to use language like chest feeding instead of breastfeeding, since that might make her more comfortable. But even that is just a small piece, there's so much more to handle first. She desperately needs therapy, she has to get her head sorted out before anything else. Assuming I'll just take this kid and raise it is honestly shocking. She's running out of time, too, she needs to see a doctor, get pregnancy checkups, all of it. I don't think she's had any prenatal care at all, that has to change if I can help it. I keep thinking about how she needs a social worker to guide her through pregnancy checkups, the birth, everything. And she needs a big, honest conversation about being accountable for her choices. Even if she thinks part of this is on me, the bottom line is there were plenty of choices she could have made differently, and she didn't. Those were her choices. Honestly, just trying to refer to chest feeding instead of breastfeeding feels like such a small detail, but it's exactly the kind of thing that could send her into a spiral if she's in the wrong mood. She's always been dramatic, and since this is confidential, I'll admit, I'm absolutely dreading the pregnancy and the afterbirth. Mood swings, especially since it's going to involve all these extremely womanly things. On top of the stress of a newborn? I'm not looking forward to it at all. I'm already bracing myself. Our last conversation was, unsurprisingly, unproductive. It quickly turned into an argument, and she's still holed up in her room. She needs prenatal care immediately. My worry and regret are running wild, not just for her but for the baby. Today has just been such a bad day. I keep beating myself up over all of this. I honestly don't know how it got to this point. If only I had a time machine she seems to think I should own. Truthfully, I'm on the fence about her claiming she's non-binary. If she acted like she didn't have a gender at all, I could take it more seriously, but she dresses like a woman, puts on makeup, wears dresses in the summer, loves feminine things. We'll sit together watching horse videos on YouTube, squealing over the new full videos. She was never a tomboy. I figured it wasn't hurting anyone, so I let her express herself. Maybe it would lead to something, maybe not. After a few weeks, even the constant changing of pronouns faded away. Then the non-binary talk flared up again hard after high school ended and she started working retail. I'd try to be understanding. Retail is terrible, and I'd only go back if I was absolutely desperate myself. But lately, the non-binary identity seems like an excuse not to work. Now, suddenly, there's a baby on the way. I'm afraid she's regressing into a more childlike mindset. I really can't tell if she's struggling with being non-binary, or if she's using it as a shield to hide from the world. Ugh. I guess no one has the answers, but all I know right now is I'm just plain scared for her and the future. Update 1. A few days ago, everything seemed to tilt on its axis. I needed some time to process before I could even speak about it. The situation still spins in my head, it just makes no sense. My daughter finally unblocked me. She and the person who got her pregnant wanted to talk, face to face, somewhere neutral. We chose IHOP. I'll admit, I'd suspected who her lover might be, and the confirmation disappointed me. This person has hovered around my daughter's friend group since high school. Out of all her friends, this was the one I always had a problem with, the only one I ever kicked out of my house. They're trans now, but 2 years back, The whole friend group was in the living room for a movie night. Every time I walked by, he was still going by he then, would lock eyes with me and mimic those loud, obnoxious orgasm sounds straight out of that scene from When Harry Met Sally. I told him to stop, sterner each time, but he only escalated it. Then, while I was in the kitchen, he somehow crept up and started miming obscene gestures right behind my back. I turned around in shock and caught him mid-act, startling and freaky behavior, even if he was fully clothed. I kicked him out that night. So now, I'll just call him the sperm donor, because that's what he is to me right now. My daughter is still my daughter and she to me, since she hasn't told me otherwise. I'm not budging on that until she asks. That IHOP meeting was a disaster. Sperm donor threw himself into the conversation and immediately put me on the defensive. According to him, I am not only an abusive monster and a bad mother, but I've now slipped even lower in his eyes for refusing to take in their baby. At least, unlike before, nobody suggested I raise the baby as my daughter's sister anymore, though that might have originally been her idea. Throughout the entire chaos, sperm donor did most of the talking while my daughter sat silently next to him, just glaring at me and nodding in agreement. Everything became a blur. Sperm donor pounded the table, and even our poor waiter quickly decided to steer clear after the drinks arrived. Surprised we weren't thrown out, honestly. Most of the tirade came from sperm donor, who clearly wanted to control the conversation. I asked the obvious, why can't he take care of the baby? His response was that his own parents were even worse than I supposedly am. So my daughter and sperm donor are simply refusing to take responsibility for the child they created. I told them flat out, I will not raise their baby for them. Adoption is their best choice. Their reply? If I won't agree, then I'll never see the baby at all. I reiterated, I'm not raising their child. So now, here we are. I feel every imaginable flavor of angry, worried, and, underneath it all, just heartbreakingly sad. I've lived long enough to know when someone comes between a family, paints them as the enemy, drives wedges wherever they can, it's never a good sign. Sperm donor has tried to cast me as an abuser and a failed mother, also he can shirk his own responsibilities. From what I gather, sperm donor is also estranged from his own family. And now, all I can think about, besides this baby's fate, is the fear that my daughter is trapped in a controlling relationship with someone who has convinced her to stop taking birth control, telling her the hormones are too feminizing, and she needs to be fixed, but won't raise the baby they insisted she have, just expects me to do it. I'm angry that my daughter can just sit there, listening to this insanity and nodding as if it makes any sense. She's not stupid. She's just blinded. And I worry constantly for that baby. There are people who think I want nothing to do with the baby because I won't raise it as my own. That's not true. In a perfect world, I'd love to have a normal, grandmotherly relationship with my grandchild, or, at the very least, the peace of knowing the child is safe and loved, adopted into a caring family. I absolutely don't care about my daughter's gender or her choices with her own body, as long as she's safe and happy, and not being led down this destructive path by someone who calls her a problem to be fixed. Sperm donor kept insisting on that word, fix, and it chilled me every time. The whole situation feels broken. My house feels empty. My adult daughter is out there somewhere, entangled with a person who treats parenthood as just someone else's burden to bear, who spins reality so completely it feels almost cult-like, up is down, refusing birth control and abortion, then expecting others to raise their child, all while insisting that my daughter is somehow fundamentally broken. I texted her, I told her I'd always be there for her, but sperm donor would never be welcome in my house again. Now, I think I'm blocked again. She's a legal adult. What else can I do? In some dark moments, I've wondered if I should just agree to take the baby, and then move to have it adopted immediately, just to make sure it lands somewhere safe and stable. But I can sense sperm donor would fight that tooth and nail, and right now, my daughter does whatever he says. I'm not even sure my plan is possible, or if it's just some Hollywood fantasy. I have an appointment set with a counselor, earliest I could get is April. Friends push me to just take the baby, either to save it from the parents or because they think it's my duty, maybe both. The one tiny comfort is that, at least at that IHOP meeting, they both seem sober. Addiction doesn't seem to be in play, at least not right now. Sometimes I wonder, am I seeing this wrong? Am I the villain here? I feel this deep dread that if I took in their baby, sperm donor would twist it into a constantly moving target, implied it would be temporary, but my daughter said permanent. Nothing adds up. I feel like sperm donor would refuse to hand over paperwork, or use the baby to manipulate me. My greater fear is that my daughter is so brainwashed or traumatized by this relationship, and there's not much I can do from the outside. I'm even considering reaching out to sperm donor's family, just in case they're more stable and willing to help, though I hear there's bad blood there too. It's a wild world when someone can hold such hardline beliefs, against abortion, protection, everything even tangentially rational, and force others to pick up the pieces. It felt like sitting across from people in their own private bubble of delusion, listening to contradictions thrown at me from every direction. I wish someone from their community would talk some sense into them, but I'm not hopeful. Time passes. I logged in, waiting for something, anything, a sign. But there's nothing. I haven't seen or heard from my daughter since that encounter. I think she's changed her number. Word travels fast in our small community, though, and I heard through the grapevine that she's now living with sperm donor out in one of the homeless camps on the edge of town. This isn't just rough living, those camps are a haven for drugs and trafficking. The panic in me deepens. A few friends and relatives have driven through those woods, combing for signs of her. But that camp is huge, messy, dangerous, no marked roads, only scattered plywood shacks and crumbling RVs. People around there have even been shot at for just walking their dogs or riding ATVs. Every trip is a risk. From what I've heard, she's still pregnant. My anxiety is a constant companion. Yes, CPS and the police are aware. But still, I worry the baby will be born addicted, since everyone living in those camps is using meth or something worse. My concern for my daughter and her child never ends. I have no idea what I'll do when this baby is born. I might have to take the baby in, just to keep it away from that life, and even if that makes me the villain, I know I'd never regret rescuing a child from misery. But honestly, the prospect of all that hard work, the drama that will follow, it's daunting beyond belief. This is where things stand. Until I hear from my daughter, I wait, and worry, and hope, more than anything, for some sliver of good news. Update 2. Basically, my pregnant daughter had shut me out of her life completely, and word on the street was that she was living somewhere deep in a homeless camp with her bizarre lover, out in the woods. The place is enormous and lawless. Me and some friends tried searching more than once but never managed to find her. It's dangerous out there, too, since those camps almost run themselves. The homeless there shoot at anyone on ATVs or hikers, and they'll even send dogs after anyone who gets too close for comfort. It's terrifying. To be clear, I don't think my daughter was tangled up with those meth heads, sex traffickers, or the ones running makeshift drug labs in the deepest part of the camp. Still, that's the sort of territory we're talking about. I reached out to sperm donor's parents at one point, desperate for any information. Turns out they've all but disowned him, thanks to the same kind of unhinged, disturbing behavior I saw myself. Only, it's even grosser when I heard how he was around their younger siblings. It's all just a mess. Fast forward a couple weeks. The story I'm about to tell shook out not too long ago, but honestly, I've hesitated to tell it because my emotions were too raw. I'm filled with deep anger, shame, and disappointment in my daughter, and I can scarcely admit it to myself. But here's what happened. I came home from grocery shopping to find this strange, pregnant woman on my doorstep. I almost didn't recognize her, but it was my daughter. She'd changed so much that meeting her face to face was surreal. She wouldn't stop talking for even a second, not enough to get a word in edgewise, and her face was peppered with small tattoos. She looked aged, like she'd lived 2 decades in the last year. She'd clearly been living rough. The anger radiated off her. She was bitter that I'd locked her out, which, yes, I did after she left, yet she expected to just waltz back into her old room as if it were still winter and none of this had ever happened. And as much as part of me wanted to shut the door, I knew I simply couldn't turn her away. In a twisted sense, I guess she was right. She told me she'd been living in that camp with sperm donor, and I could see with one look that she hadn't showered since leaving. She stank. She didn't have the slightest hint of shame about blocking my number, or about how she'd made me sick with worry by vanishing off the face of the earth. All she wanted to talk about was the grand destiny she and sperm donor were building. Her words spilled out in endless streams about their new community, the new people. Not one mention of the baby, nothing about the tiny life she was carrying. It was all about sperm donor and how they were going to change the world together. I don't know how anyone can stand to be around those two. Sperm donor apparently has a whole harem now. My daughter is one of several women, all happy to bear his children. Broodmare is my word, she'd call herself something much more royal. From what she freely overshared, sperm donor is a complete sex fiend. It's like the cult of him. Eventually, I managed to wedge in a question about prenatal care, and she swore up and down that she'd been seeing a doctor regularly and that everything was fine. I knew she was lying. Her mind was racing a mile a minute, her stories made no sense, and half of what she said seemed straight out of some fever dream. If she was awake, she was talking, and none of it ever ended. Just this constant flood of insanity. The only truths I could glean were through her haze of rambling. A bunch of women, and, inexplicably, men too, were going to help birth the next generation of these so-called new people. Yes, biological men. Sperm donor was the epicenter of this wheel, her words. I'd met him once, and I'll forever be baffled that he somehow got more than one woman in tow. Sometimes she said she wanted to raise the baby herself, though she couldn't describe a plan for taking care of it. No housing, no money, nothing. In other moments, she wanted to give it up for adoption, but not for the child's well-being, no, just to further the spread of new people. Their whole mission is apparently to raise children without gender expectations. That was her excuse for not knowing her own baby's gender yet. And some members of their group, her wheel, supposedly communicate empathy through the other world. She was completely unmoored from reality. As a houseguest, she was an absolute nightmare. She acted feral from her time in the camp. She didn't clean up after herself, rarely flushed the toilet, and ate everything in sight, which, fine, she was pregnant, but she wouldn't even attempt basic manners. Worse, she would demand to be taken out to restaurants. Demand, not ask. I caved a couple times, just hoping for a real connection, but the whole time she sat in those places, she was eerily detached while insisting she was finding her true family with the new people. When I took her to buy baby supplies, she just grabbed the first thing she saw and continued on her endless rant about their great fate. Finally, I got out of her that she was supposedly due in mid-July, a date suspiciously outside the original range she'd given me. I'd been obsessed about her due date, half expecting to find a baby abandoned on my porch one day. And the story about ongoing doctor care? Another lie. I could barely keep her focused on a single topic. She would stop talking just long enough for a breath, never more. If I so much as tried to respond, she'd cut me off, usually to gush about sperm donor, who, by the way, was nowhere to be found, just hanging out at the camp with his breeding stock. I waited, hoping she'd come down from whatever high she was on, but then it all unraveled. She went into full-blown labor. It was a disaster from start to finish. She started having pain, but her water hadn't broken. When we got to the hospital, the truth came out. She hadn't seen a doctor for this entire pregnancy, despite state programs that would have covered it in full. That made her high risk, and she was admitted immediately. That's when everything changed. She turned on the nurses and doctors, unleashing the most vile, hateful tirades on them I've ever witnessed. She said the ugliest things, racist, vicious, truly monstrous words. The nurses and doctors were saints, but I was horrified. It wasn't even the pain. She wasn't in hard labor at that point. It was just who she'd become, these delusions of grandeur, screaming that they were trying to punish her as their queen. It was so wild, I honestly can't even describe the monster she became. I pulled one of the nurses aside, lowering my voice as I explained where my daughter had been living. I admitted that I suspected she was on drugs, even though I hadn't caught her in the act. The staff was so professional in their response, giving her painkillers that clearly mellowed her out, which, not going to lie, felt like they were just sedating her to keep her from causing more chaos. Imagine my shock when her blood work came back clean. She didn't want me present for the birth, and honestly, as guilty as it makes me feel to admit, I was a little relieved. I was ashamed of her behavior. Still, I made sure to find a social worker on staff and told her everything I knew. The woman was polite, but she wouldn't say anything official about my daughter's mental state. I practically pleaded, insisted there had to be bipolar, mania, something at work here, because this behavior was beyond the pale. Unless there was a threat to herself or the baby, though, they couldn't intervene, and my daughter never made any threats. Against all odds, her child was born at a healthy weight, perfectly normal, and, thankfully, not addicted to anything. I hold back some details because the internet is forever, and maybe someday that child will look for answers about their origins. My daughter truly lucked out. She had an uncomplicated delivery when everything pointed toward disaster. She refused to name sperm donor as the father, though I told the social worker who he was. But by law, they couldn't put his name on the birth certificate just by my word. Then, without warning, my daughter vanished from the hospital that night. She didn't check out officially, didn't say goodbye to me or her newborn. Just walked away. Because the hospital is a safe surrender point, she won't be charged with abandonment. CPS asked me if I wanted to take the child. I can't describe how much that question tore me to pieces, but I said no. I have so many reasons. The biggest is I refuse to be hostage to my daughter's whims, or to sperm donor, who is bound to create more children just as carelessly. I don't want to risk shouldering that burden, especially after everything I've been through with my own daughter. What if my trying again leads to more heartache and failure? I honestly believe getting a new family is the best chance that baby could have, even with how flawed the foster system can be. At least, it has to be better than that camp. Still, the guilt is suffocating, and I live with it every day. Deep down, I suspect that soon enough there will be a sibling, as my daughter continues down this reckless path. I know she's not well. I know she's caught in a cult, likely under real danger, and, given the stories she's told me about others, probably already inflicting the same abuse onto someone else. She's a selfish liar, and by nothing short of luck or grace, her baby was born healthy. My daughter is rolling dice with her own life, and the lives of any children she brings into it. She's sick, yes, and under the control of a predatory man, convinced she has magic thought powers. Still, she bears responsibility for the choices she's making. The layers of identity, her partner's transgender status, her own ambiguity, none of that matters. She's an adult. She's making choices, and those choices are bad. The way she treated the hospital staff haunts me. Her cruelty was indescribable. I actually had to turn to a thesaurus just to try and capture it, but even then, there are no words strong enough. It became painfully clear. Whatever her mental illness, she truly believes other people are beneath her, just there to serve her on demand. She came home before the birth because she needed someone to care for her, and I, of course, gave everything I could. She was 9 months pregnant and my daughter, but the very moment she no longer needed me, or her child, she left, as easily as taking off a jacket, without a word. For days, I listened to her talk, and not once did I hear hope, or worry, or even care about her baby's future, just vague ideas about using the child as a vehicle for her movement. She made the decision to go back to sperm donor's harem, her wheel or whatever they call it. Whatever is wrong with her, I feel intense shame for the person she's become. I know mental illness does not equal being a bad person, but my daughter's gone beyond poor choices. Still, I haven't fully written her off. Maybe, someday, she'll come to her senses. But right now, it appears I'm blocked again, so I have to seriously reconsider my boundaries. I've even started thinking about moving, half expecting that one day a group of cult weirdos will land on my porch. I don't know what to do anymore. It's not possible for me to afford some professional deprogrammer, even if that was realistic. This feels like so much more than just a cult problem. She needs true medical intervention, and I don't have a single legal avenue left to force it. At least one thing, the only bright spot, is that the baby is safe. This whole year has been a spiral, one wild descent after another. Just a year ago, I had a slacker teen under my roof. Now this.